What's up, Snarf Goblins? I finally finished Starman after, oh jeez, it feels like I've been reading that shit since I was like 16. Honestly, I thought the whole story was alright. I got the 2 Starman compendiums, but they're put away right now, and I don't want to go grab them. But they were pretty good. I have some notes though. But before we get into the notes, let me say what I liked about the series, okay? First off, I like the protagonist, Jack Knight, that he's just a regular guy. He's very relatable. He just owns a pawn shop, and his brother just died, and like, there's not really a grandiose feel of Starman that's like page turning. Like, the grandiose parts of Starman are at the peaks, you know. Starman himself doesn't seem grandiose. He's sort of like an everyman, a little bit of an underdog. And he's just picking up the mantle of Starman, and he didn't even want to do it. And if you don't know who Starman is, he's basically a guy that has this cosmic rod that can like feed off of energy of stars to make energy blasts. You can make it fly, and you can like control it psychically and make force fields and stuff. Now, here's the thing that I liked. Another thing I liked about the series is I like a lot of the art. The art's very nice. I liked whenever they went into space. That was really cool. I like the part where they were in space was probably my favorite part, whenever they weren't doing filler arcs, which I'll get to. Okay, before we get into the negatives I have in this series, we just have to talk about how fucking cool these covers are. Like, type in any number Starman issue. I think there's like 81 of them. Type in Starman issue either 1 through 81 cover. Look that shit up. They are all opium as fuck. Okay? They are all fire. Okay, as much as I don't like the Shade series either, really fucking fire covers. Like, the Starman may have the best covers out of any series ever. I don't think I've ever seen any better covers. Like, these are fucking awesome. Like, I've only showed maybe like 10% of them just now. Like, they're almost all that good. Like, I'm not saying there's any ones that are bad, but like not all of them are like that good, but they're all good. I didn't really like this one. I thought it was kind of cringe. You're still here? I kind of thought that you were a one-off joke from that one video I made where I talked about how I changed my channel name. Yeah, we're here to stay. We're gonna be a thing now, actually. Oh. I guess let's just continue this video then. Anyway, as I was saying, not all of them are like that good, but they're all good. Like, they're all really fucking good. Just had to get that out of the way real quick, because we're moving on to the negatives next. This is just editing snarf whenever I was looking for covers to put in to show you how sick they were. Like, they're really sick. It's not enough to carry the series, but they're really sick. Now let's get into the things I didn't like about Starman, because that's pretty much where the things I like ended. I'd say overall it was fine, but there was a lot of unnecessary like writing in this fucking series, dude. This series is so overwritten. It's not even funny. Let me give you an example of overwritten. So there's this character named the Shade. He's basically got access to like a shadow dimension that gives him shadow powers or whatever. And he's basically immortal. He's been alive for a really long time. And once the character's introduced, a lot of the times at the beginning of an issue, he'll have notes about the thing that happened that day. And he's like definitely more of an indigo writer. If I'm using that phrase correctly, it might be called something else, but it's basically just the term referred to someone who uses way more words to write something down than they really need to. Like H.P. Lovecraft is a good example if you've read any of his works. And you'll literally be hit with maybe 3 or 4 paragraph, like multi-paragraph long text boxes to read through right when you open an issue. And that can just drain all the energy out of you to even want to read it, because I'm reading a comic book right now, not a novel. Why the fuck am I reading all the Shade's bullshit? You know what I mean? The Shade is probably my least favorite character just because of that bullshit, making me read all that garbage. Another thing that I don't like about Starman, especially during the Shade miniseries at the end, which I wasn't even able to finish, by the way, because it was so boring, is a lot of times for Starman, they'll have an interesting thing that happens in the main plot, like right at the end of an issue, and then once you turn the page to the next issue, it starts out with a flashback instead of continuing what happened. And the flashback will take up like more than half the issue. And then I'm just sitting here like, I just want to know what the fuck happens next. Why do I have to read all this bullshit? It's monotonous, okay? And especially when the Shade's on screen, because holy shit does that guy love to yap. Now, technically I didn't finish the second compendium because I didn't finish the Shade miniseries, but I was just flipping through it the other night, and it's so wordy, it's not even worth it, because I didn't even like the Shade as a character in the first place. I read like maybe 6 issues into the Shade miniseries before I just was like, I can't do this anymore. All the good things about Starman are majorly brought down by those things, especially the thing where they do a flashback like every single fucking issue. It's so annoying. Another thing I don't like about the Starman series is there's filler, which sucks. I always hate filler. And normally, whenever there's filler, it's because, like, it's a show adaptation and they need to, you know, stretch it out a little bit longer because, you know, once you find a show that strikes iron, it's hard to find one that does the same thing twice. But low-key, whenever I'm reading these filler arcs, it feels like the writers just ran out of ideas. Or not necessarily that they ran out of ideas. It's like they just didn't even want to write the main story because they're constantly just like, here's a flashback, and here's filler, and here's a side story, and here's something about this character's life that related to this exact moment that happened like 10 years ago. And I'm just like, I don't need to know all these character backstories. It's like anime, bruh. It's like, previously on Dragon Ball, and then it goes on to tell you some shit that happened forever ago, and then it goes into a backstory of a character I didn't care about, and I'm just... Now, this may sound like I hated Starman because of all my complaints, but to be honest, it only got really bad in the second compendium. The first compendium's pacing's still slow, but it's not unbearable. The Shade as a character gets more and more integrated into the plot in the second compendium, and because of that, he has a lot more notes about what's happening. And because of that, that means there's also a lot more text, which I would just recommend skipping if I were you. I've read a majority of what the Shade has to say, and I promise none of it is interesting. Like, not a single word is interesting. So, I honestly don't know why I kept reading it. That's low-key on me, because I wasn't enjoying any of the Shade's text, but I'm like a completionist, and I also like to give the writers a chance. You know, I don't just want to skip over some shit because it's long. I'm like, maybe they'll get better at doing this, but no. The Shade is forever an uninteresting character. It's not even worth for me to tell you much about him because he literally just... His motivation's really dumb too. Like, he started out as a bad guy, then he just randomly turned into a good guy pretty much for no reason. Anyway, I'm kind of rambling on. Sorry, this is so unstructured. It's time to give this series a rating out of 10. Honestly, I feel like I want to rate the volumes separately because reading the volumes 1 and 2 were just a different experience. I think reading volume 1 was probably like a 7 out of 10 experience, and reading volume 2 was more like a 5 out of 10 experience, just because it was so unnecessarily wordy in certain parts. It'll even be wordy in action sequences. That's something that really annoys me too. Like, if you're really wordy during the parts that need to be expositional, I can understand that. But when you're putting in like paragraph-long blocks of text all over these fighting panels, and you actually expect me to fucking read that shit, do I look like an old man to you? Do I look like that I just sit down for reading because I love the feeling of seeing shapes that represent sounds on a page and putting them together in my brain? Does that seem like why I like reading to you, or because I like the story? Because that's almost what it seems like they're banking on that you like doing that. Whatever. I feel like I'm being too negative. Starman isn't that bad, and a lot of people like it. I feel like I'm the only person I've seen that's even making these critiques about the series, because I've heard only positive from the comic book community about this series. So that's why I felt the need to say all that stuff. Because like I said, I don't think it's Starman's bad series, but evening out the two scores, it'd be like a 6 out of 10, which is, if you're in the mood for a 6 out of 10 story, then I guess read it. But there's better stuff out there, honestly. I wouldn't recommend getting Starman unless the premise of it really intrigues you, of carrying on the torch of being Starman, even though you don't want to, and being an underdog, I guess. Anyway, I'm going to stop rambling now. That's all I had to say. See ya.